Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast. Tottenham have almost beaten Man United 2-1, but it was 2-2. And alongside a licensed coach, JJ, we're going to be discussing a lot of the talking points of the game because there were a lot. There's a lot to unpack, JJ, isn't there?
There is.
I mean, just the top of my head, we've got the lineup, Richarlison and Muani, like their positioning throughout the game. It was obviously, this all very deliberate and planned by Frank, but maybe we can help explain what was going on there. The starting 11 in general, but also there were specific parts around it, such as many were asking for Udogie to start at left back, Spence at right back, and Odegaard at left wing. When those things happened, things changed in a positive manner. So are we going to see perhaps more of that going forward? Or was there a reason why we didn't start that way and perhaps a benefit to starting the way we did? And then Porro's changing role under Thomas Frank, I think, is an important topic. You've got an excellent fullback in Jed Spence and an excellent wing back in Pedro Porro. So who's going to suit his style better? And an encouraging performance from Xavi Simmons as well. I think that was great to see. Richarlison's performance, I think, you could write a book on him. He's such a fascinating character, but how was it just summed up of lots of finger pointing at him, and then he's the guy who comes up with a brilliant goal at the end. But anyway, should we start at the start? The starting 11, when that came out, there's always mass confusion now because the way teams do their lineups, they give you and list it in the order of the number on their shirt, and you have no idea what formation that's going to be. I think many expected Richarlison as a left winger and Simmons as the 10. But anyway, did you want to talk us through a bit about what you made of that and how it was kind of set up?
Yeah, I think I dropped this onto Twitter before the match. When I saw the lineup, I went with an assumption that it's a Palhinha-Sarr double pivot, and it's going to be Richie on the left with Colomwani through the middle, Simmons in the 10, and then Brendan Johnson on the right-hand side. So my feeling was that, again, I think we mentioned this in the last video. When you're going to play against Amorim's system for Man United, they are going to outnumber a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 in the middle, and they're always going to have one, even two, if they allow one of their centre halves to step up. More players in the centre of the pitch, and sometimes if you freeze frame Man United when they are in defensive positions, not even in pressing situations, you'll see just how congested they make the middle of the park. Therefore, the advantages are obviously in the half spaces, so in between where you would have the outside centre half and the wing backs. And so my feeling was that we would probably, without Kudus being available, we would probably try to keep Brennan Johnson really, really high up the pitch to try and occupy or to try and pin back the left wing back, and to also try and get Shaw to stay quite tucked in. And then we would rotate the pitch effectively, which would also mean Richarlison coming in a little bit more central. He'd get much closer to Colomwani. And then what you really want is you want good work in that rotation. You want Colomwani, Richarlison and Xavi Simmons working off each other to see if we can get the ball into that pocket of space that's going to make itself available. You're also going to, because this is Man United and looking at their players, what you're going to be thinking about is how honest is Bruno doing the defensive work? Like, how much is he really going to commit to dropping back into the positions? He doesn't want to do that. It's not the role that he's born to play. And so again, will he get lazy? Will he not go into the positions you need him? And that, again, is going to open up that little kind of wide bit of space for us to play into. So that was my feeling before kickoff, and that would obviously cause confusion. With sometimes Richarlison would pull all the way into the middle. Randall Colomwani was pulling out in different directions, trying to pick the ball to feet, and then possibly for us to have an option to bang the ball straight up the middle with maybe Romero or Vicario hitting it long to Richarlison to secure it. It didn't really work, but there was a couple of times that Richarlison did drop a little bit deeper and secure possession. He wasn't by any means brilliant today, but that was my feeling on it. From what I saw, I haven't changed my mind in terms of that's what they wanted to do, but I don't think we particularly put that down. We were pretty stodgy, and we didn't look great. And there were times that, we played into Man United's hands, and the Man United goal is errors on our part rather than Man U really doing anything to us.
Yeah, we will talk a bit about these errors, I think, at the end as one of the topics, because it's so frustrating when you've worked so hard, it must be, as players and as coaching staff, manager, to get a goal in a Premier League game, and then to allow your opposition to start ahead or concede a lead. We had it at both ends of the game through very avoidable individual errors. And I'm interested to chat a bit later about whether we feel this is just a part of growth, development for individuals, and there's not much a manager can really do about it when it happens, or if they are avoidable things by taking certain actions. And I think we'll cap it off with the mistakes topic. But just for now, carrying on with the shape and the way we set up, you've explained how we planned to set up. That wasn't working. And the general chat from the stands where I was sitting was bring on Udogie, bring on Odegaard, have a natural left-sided wing back and left wing, move Spence to the right wing back, because Porro, you could see it from, even though I feel the first 30 minutes was actually, it was quite positive. I felt there was lots of improvements going on and people were going, okay, we're stringing passes together and attacking cohesions. But Mbumo and Porro, that scared me a bit, because I felt like Porro's an excellent offensive wing back, but if you put a very pacey, strong forward up against him who can dribble, they're going to find space and they're going to find opportunities, and you're putting Porro in a difficult spot. So maybe putting someone like Spence, in that role instead would give us a bit more protection on the break. But yeah, what did you make of the subs? Should we have started like that? And do you think the subs made us better? The changes made us better?
Yeah, so the first question, should we have started like that? It's really hard to second guess. The coaches have got access to the data and the player load data, and that's really, really important. Udogie's obviously had a long time out. He's had several injuries. Every season he picks up what seems to be a serious one. So it may well be that Udogie is being carefully managed in terms of the performance he put in against Copenhagen and what the amount of minutes they wanted him today. There's always an argument that start players and bring them off, but the counter argument to starting players is if you start them and it's going okay, but it's not yet worked, then you eventually have to leave them on. And if you start a player and they're doing really, really well and they are kind of the source of everything that's going right, it's then really hard to bring them off because you'll stunt that right. So I understand why people say that, but if the coaching staff have made a decision that he needed to be managed from minutes point of view, then okay, that makes sense in terms of the lineup. But I totally agree. Udogie gives us something. He balances the team a lot better on the left-hand side. And this is no criticism of Jed Spence, but if you look at his performances from an attacking perspective, 9 times out of 10, when we play the ball to Spence, the attack will end with him. It will stop there. Other teams have, they know what he's got in the locker, which is effectively like a lung-busting run, and they will shut that down. They'll put him so close to the touchline. They'll double up. They've got a player waiting in behind if he tries to knock it and go. They know what they're doing with Jed Spence, and therefore it's quite easy for teams to snuff that out. And so having him on the right-hand side as a 1v1 defender against Mbumo, again, makes perfect sense. You never know which side Mbumo is going to start. They'll put the team sheet out there, but Man U have also deployed him on the right-hand side, so you don't really know which side they're going to go with. And with hindsight, you say we did get better. I agree with that. We got better when those changes were made. But there is definitely an argument in terms of why the coaching staff pre-game have gone with that. And they've thought to themselves that we can affect this game the way it needs to be right now. Sadly, Man United's goal is Mbumo up against Porro. And we'll talk about the mistakes and why that goal should never have been scored. But, it does add fuel to the fire. But I can definitely see why the coaching staff might have gone a different way to begin.
It does just feel like the way we're trying to, and this has been a discussion around kind of this season on the whole, there's a lot of confusion, and we won't know until more time has passed and we reflect back, but we're in a good position in the table. I think we should highlight that. So we're obviously doing something right. But there's the eye test versus the data test that people are going to argue about. Like the XG stats aren't stacking up to where we're finishing, but does that matter? If you're finishing high up the table, does it matter? And that's going to be an opinion of people listening. And we're not here, I don't think, to try and sway you either way. You pick what you prefer. But the eye test also kind of says, like, we are playing with a mentality of let's be hard to beat as a priority right now. Maybe it's to evolve into something else in the future, but right now that's a priority. So the likes of Porro have been pulled back into more of a risk-adverse format in their positioning, where his strengths were harnessed in different ways by other coaches, which should have been more get forward, use that creativity to be almost like a playmaker for us in a certain role. But at the same time, the counter to that is how often did we see ourselves exposed, where he would have been standing if he had been in a more defensive role. But we have a player who's more defensively leaning in his role. So maybe there's an argument to say, Spence could start that position. But like you said, the thing we don't have is the player load data. I think as fans, we always say, why is this player not doing this? You should rest them in this order, not that order. We don't have that amazing amount of data these people have to say you're running a risk here if you do that. And the manager's not going to tell us that. They can't. I was also told that players' medical data, and it's sort of obvious when you're told it, it's as protected as your own medical history as a human. You don't want someone looking. Imagine if your spouse went, on a microphone and went, by the way, my partner's health history is as follows this week. It's personal data. You can't get that on players. So managers have to be very politically, not politically, but very careful about how they talk about players' fitness and use that as excuses and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's talk about that first goal a bit as we're on that topic, I think, of Porro and Umbumo. Do you think that would have... Go on, talk us through it. Where do you think there were the avoidable moments of that goal then?
Yeah, I mean, it's an infuriating goal because it's such an easy goal to prevent. This was not a great goal, and they are the ones that drive me mad. As I've said before, Tottenham, we certainly have it in the locker at the minute to beat ourselves, to make things difficult for ourselves, as opposed to the opposition having to do something. We showed that absolutely against Chelsea, and we've done it again with the goals that we've conceded today. So we have an opportunity to clear the ball with Papsar, so they're on the attack down Manchester United's left on our right-hand side. The ball is a poor ball in, and we should have dealt with it from that moment. Papsar hesitates. He gets caught between smashing it clear, which is totally acceptable under Thomas Frank. We've seen that. We've seen our defenders and our goalkeeper being okay. If this was Ange Postecoglou, he'd have got torn strips off if he'd have just hoofed the ball up the pitch. But he had the opportunity to do that. He chose not to. But because he hesitated between playing a pass and looking like he was about to swing it clear, Mickey's not ready for it. And I don't think Mickey was expecting that ball to come to him. And therefore, when the ball has been, shoveled into his path, he's then not sorted his feet out. He's played it into the Man United player. I think it might have been Cunha or whoever it was he's hit with the ball. And therefore, the ball then rolls back to United to recycle it over to the other side. And then Jed Spence, maybe, and again, this is finer details. The big error is probably Papsar. Then Jed Spence should be pinching. He should be stealing. I know what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want, because Ahmad's so quick and he's so good on the ball, he doesn't want to commit himself, certainly within the penalty area, to a challenge. But when Ahmad steps on that ball, they've played a nice little triangle to get it to Ahmad. When he stops it and slows it down, you've got to be on your toes and you've got to be hedging and getting closer and closer and closer and just saying to him, right, if you're going to beat me, you're going to beat me from really, really close range now. And I think Jed Spence has got it in the locker to just about keep up with him and probably block across if Ahmad wants to go down the line to his right foot, because what he wants to do is be on his left. So you keep taking that left foot away from him. He doesn't. He stands completely stock still. And Ahmad has relatively so much time to see the way that it's unfolding. And he sees the players falling in. And then all Mbumo does is he just gently peels away from Porro. And Porro, not one look over his shoulder. No awareness, no idea that he's peeled off. You could, if you're being super harsh, and the coaching staff might do this, you could also say, BJ, lean on him. You've seen this now. You've got full flight of that ball. You can see he's peeled off your man. Brennan's got his own man. This is absolutely me not tearing down Brennan. I'll do that for the second goal. But he could definitely lean on Mbumo a bit more. He does make contact, but he could definitely make it a bit harder. So when you add all of those things up, all of those little bits could have been done better. And as ever, if you make loads of little mistakes in and around the penalty area, especially a team that's spent God knows how many millions on their forward players and a fantastic young player like Ahmad, you will be punished. And we were.
Well, we've seen it 100 times in recent seasons that if you concede your possession in an unplanned way, you concede goals alarmingly highly, at an alarmingly high rate, versus losing the ball when you've had time to set up. And that was a prime example of losing the ball unexpectedly, not being set up. Everyone's on panic mode, scramble mode. No one quite knows where anyone else is standing because it's not something they've been routinely doing on the training pitch to prevent. And it's down to player-on-player moments, and you've got very expensive Premier League forward players running at your defenders, and it's often going to result in them getting a very good opportunity, as it did, and it typically does. So I often find, we mentioned BJ there, the final player of a phase gets most of the blame, defending. But there was 3 moments there in total, and it's equal responsibility for everyone in the build-up to that goal to prevent that from needing that final defending moment from Johnson, I was going to say. But we'll get to a second. But we did, I do want to, before we get to our goal, lead on to it with a thought of play just as a quick touch on. As a real positive today, I thought Xavi Simmons was improved. He looked stronger, more confident. He was beating his man. He was creating things when he had the ball. Did you see an improvement there as well?
Yeah, only marginal improvement in terms of completion and end product, but you can definitely see it. And I'm hoping that this is something that fans can get hold of as well and really, kind of cling on to. There is a fantastic player in there, and anybody who has been writing him off has probably gone far too early. He's a high quality individual technically. His body movement, his manipulation of the ball, he's still not perfect. He's still not perfect. There was a moment where he showed, again, a perfect example of the two sides where the ball was dropping over his shoulder. He'd lovely spin, brought it down on his left foot. And it's a really simple pass for a player of his quality with his right. It's just bring it down and then just bang, hit it with your instep or just lift it gently, and he lifts it out of play. So he's getting there. He's a really, really good player. And hopefully there's lots that we're seeing in terms of how well he moves past players that he is going to get a little bit quicker, a little bit sharper. He will get stronger. And if he wants to then move on to the player we think he can be, it will be the Luka Modric thing. It will be the ability to ride challenges. He will start putting the ball in a place where the only way to get it is to foul him. And he will grow and he will develop that. I've got hopes that that's the way he's going to go. So yeah, he deserves credit today.
Good. Yeah, I'm really I'm one of those clinging on to. I think he's got a huge ceiling, and like all players, it can go one of 2 ways. But I think you can see with him, if it goes the right way, it could go a long way up, which is great, and be a player that warranted the price tag. So the second, our equaliser, Mathys Tell, I was so delighted when he scored. It was the other side to where I was sitting, so I was in the south stand and we played the other way this game. But as soon as I saw that white bandage in celebration in the distance, I could see it was him, and I was thinking, I'm so glad it's you. You deserve that confidence boost. You deserve that moment. You've had a bit of a tough time confidence-wise and with certain moments. It was a bit of a lucky deflection. I would just caveat with that, not getting too carried away. It did look like a beautiful strike on first go until I saw the replay, but still credit to him. There was also talk of, should he play more? I was now hearing, which is quite interesting because at first no one wanted him near the team, and it did make me think. Actually, I did think he had a positive impact since he came on. Are we in a position where he should be getting more opportunities to start?
Maybe. It's really hard to say because what we've got is such a limited data set, so few minutes that he's had. The other day I think we made 6 substitutions because we had a concussion sub, right, and he didn't get on the pitch. He didn't get a sniff in a game where we created almost nothing. And so it's difficult. Clearly he's not quite trusted. There's a lot of people out there that are going to be looking at the way Richie's playing, his lack of confidence, and the misses and the lack of getting himself in good positions. And then Tell comes on and with basically one of his first touches manages to do that. There's going to be a few people kind of calling for him to get his minutes instead of Richarlison, right, as maybe back up to Colomwani, or as the rotation option, and on the left hand side along with Odebear. So yeah, there's a shout for it. Delighted as you were, delighted for him. He, he's come in for a huge amount of criticism. It's been difficult, but I love the way he rolled De Ligt. That's not easy to do. The ball from Udogie across the box is moving away from him. He manages to get a good surface on it, but what he does, and this is very striker instinct, wingers don't kind of have this in their locker because it's not natural to them to do it, but he uses the surface, his body, to roll, and he gives him a little slap as well, to roll De Ligt, and then De Ligt, if De Ligt wants that ball, it's a penalty. There's nothing he can do about it once he puts himself in that position. So well done for him. He gets round, and yeah, okay, you got to buy a ticket to win the lottery, right? And he does, and he gets a little deflection, but he deserves that bit of luck for the turn.
And fast forward barely any time at all, really. And Richarlison, after, there's the talk around the stadium, God, well, why did we not sub him off? He should be off the pitch. He's had an awful game. I looked over the shoulder of the guy in front of me on a WhatsApp, and it was called, what was it? It was a Scum-Free Zone was the WhatsApp group. So we can guess what that was, because a group of Spurs fans. And it said, and I just saw Richarlison and about 10 poo emojis next to it. So they obviously weren't very happy about him. And then seconds later, he pops up with a beautiful goal, as is the way of football. It was a nice goal, wasn't it? I think that kind of little bit of retribution there for Richie. He can never deny the guy's work ethic and passion, which I think allows people to warm to him a bit. Even though he didn't have the best game up until that point, definitely fair to say he did do what the striker has to do and get the goal, right? So what did you make of the finish?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways I can go with this. I can be super critical, or I can be a bit more upbeat. I'll try and walk a fine line. He had one in the first half that was a nailed on. He should be scoring that. Brennan Johnson actually does really well, beats his man on the inside and lifts a lovely left-footed cross, drops over the centre half. And when you play with three centre halves, it's really difficult to drop a ball into that kind of area. That is for me, that is a nailed on goal. So a bit disappointing that he didn't take that chance. And that was a bit symptomatic of where he's been overall recently. But the player that actually deserves a lot of credit for Richarlison's goal is Odobert. Odobert came on and he was very good. And I've been very harsh on Odobert, but he actually came on. And after being a bit quiet, he then sprang into action. He was actually involved in both the goals, the actions for both the goals. He was positive. He was taking his man on. He had Ahmad on toast because Ahmad doesn't want to defend. That's not what he wants to do. And Odobert had him. And that is fantastic to see. And then when that ball comes out, I think it's headed out from a corner. Odobert, lovely first touch and positive. He doesn't second guess himself. There was too many times in this game where players were taking one too many touch, thinking that they could create a slightly better angle or a slightly better situation. This was one touch and positive. And that's great to see. And it's, when you're not playing particularly well, that type of thing tends to work in your favour. And so Odobert whips it in. And because I think they played with a player on the line, might have been Ugarte, he can't get out. He can't get out in time. But if you watch Richie's movement, that's where I'm being harsh, Richie actually stops, he puts the brakes on, he stands completely still. Whereas ideally you'd want him moving out as well to make sure he stays on side as you see a player winding to put the ball back in the box. But it doesn't matter. He's in the right place, and what is really good is his awareness of where the posts are. He gets a very deliberate and a very good touch on what is a shot from Odobert. It's not a cross. So he deserves good credit for that. He was in the right place at the right time, whatever the reason, but the header is very good. That is a good striker's goal. He is good with his head, and he should have scored more goals recently with his head. And, as you say, a little bit of a redemption arc. He gets the goal that, should have been the winner.
Yeah. And in my head, it was the winner. And yeah, shout out to Odobert, by the way. I think he's been slowly crawling back through the ranks, and he's had a major injury. Let's not forget, he's a young player. It's credit to him. Hope that continues. He's got a rotten opportunity for him. We don't have that left wing position nailed down. Let's hope this young player can prove to us that he's ready and be competition for that spot full time. But I must confess, I help someone get my relative man I go with. He needs a little bit of help getting back to the car, so I leave. I leave just before Richie's goal. I hear the screams. I'm celebrating in the concourse, watching the goal on replay. Absolutely delighted. Run outside, find my relative who's kind of going towards the car. Oh, it's brilliant. And we're going, how nice is it to get home and that long 2.5-hour drive back with a win, and just talking about that. And we're in the car heading back. Must be 10 minutes into the journey. Let's put on TalkSport and listen to the crying Man United fans. And the talk was, the keeper's got to do better. And we're thinking, yeah. And he goes, Vicario's got to be stronger. And I went, what? Vicario? What's this? And the news, my penny drops and our hearts sink and we look at each other, mouths open. I nearly take the wrong lane off the roundabout and we realise we have conceded in the last 10 seconds. But anyway, you're going to have to tell me about this goal because I missed it. All I know is De Ligt got some... And when you listen to the radio, the problem is with Man United, and playing Man United rather, is you only hear it from a Man United's fan's perspective on the radio because it's all talked about how that, if it's Man United, it's never from the Tottenham perspective. But from their side, it was a valiant redemption to a 2-2 draw, but they had to be better in the game. But anyway, talk to us a bit about the goal. JJ, was it avoidable again?
Yeah, very avoidable. We didn't necessarily cover ourselves in glory in terms of how Man United got the corner in, the 96th minute of 96 or 6+6 added. But regardless of that, once it's a set piece, looking up at the clock, this is effectively it. This is one chance. They've sent up their goalkeeper as well, who actually had a very good game, right? It should be mentioned that he made 2 brilliant saves in the first half.
Did.
2 very good saves from chances we had. So, we did create some stuff today. Send up the keeper. And at that point in time, each individual has to do their job, and we didn't. That's it. The Vicario thing is worth a conversation, but actually, Brennan Johnson, I've tried to defend you, and I've taken so much flack for trying to be quite measured with Brennan Johnson, but he is De Ligt's marker and he completely loses him. He goes walkabout. So they both start outside the penalty spot. De Ligt makes a run, square centre, and then just peels away. Johnson, just that momentary concentration, continues that forward right into the middle. He's not got the flight of the ball because he was so focused on De Ligt. And then he's looking straight at his own goal, realises the ball is miles above him, turns around only to find out De Ligt has peeled away to the far post. And it is a really good header. He puts it in a tiny little spot in the near top corner. And then Vicario, the conversation is, could his running line, because he's not impeded, there's not a player on the line in front of him, could his movement line have been square, whereas he takes a slight movement back behind the line, and therefore he's kind of behind the line as he's trying to push it. And he gets 2 hands to it, he gets it up, but it hits the netting, and it does come back out, but it's a goal. It's over the line, it's in. So there is a conversation to be had about Vicario's movement across the line as he's tracking the ball. Certainly, that's fine margins, but the bottom line is, Brent, go with him and make sure that is not an unchallenged header. He doesn't. De Ligt gets the header. They get the 2-2. We feel like we've been hit with a defeat. It's extraordinarily painful. We didn't play brilliantly. We played okay. We created a few bits. Maybe 1 or 2 clear-cut chances more than Man U. But, yeah, I think a lot of people would look at that and go, a draw is a fair result. Not if you're 2-1 up in the 95th plus minute. You see that game out. Doesn't matter whether it's been fairly even. Football doesn't care whether it's fairly even. The points on the board and the key results are about seeing out those key moments, and we didn't do it.
I would defend Brennan a little bit here, not because it was his responsibility to stop De Ligt, but if I looked at that Man United side in that moment and I had to rank 3 players as the biggest threat, De Ligt would be one of them. And if I had to rank the Tottenham players of the top weakest 3 defensive options in there, I'd put Brennan Johnson as one of those. So I would say there's a mismatch there in my head of what on earth is Brennan Johnson being asked to mark De Ligt? Shouldn't that be Van de Ven, Romero, Udogie, Paulinia, someone who's a defensive-minded first player in that role? Or is it not how zonal marking? I'm assuming we're doing zonal marking. That's just the downside to zonal marking. You just don't have time to counter that situation. It is what it is. And yeah.
Yeah, so the zonal marking is the thing. You could definitely argue there are other players that could pick up De Ligt. Johnson was his man all game long. He actually got a yellow card, I think, in the first half for fouling De Ligt. He did his job fairly well for most of the game, but when you have a hybrid system, which is what Thomas Frank and his team use, they have zonal and then man-to-man for the rest. Your best headers of the ball tend to be the zonal guys along the 6-yard line. They want them along there, or Harry Maguire, right? He's the one that everybody's getting attracted to and getting attracted under. So you have to spread it out. And I'm guessing the coaching staff have looked at it in training and they have thought, Bren, he sticks to task. He will do what is required. They've looked at it and they've decided, I think
Mm.
it's Andreas Georgeson who gets a lot of credit for the set pieces, right? Him and Matt Wells, who I think does the defensive duty. They've made that decision. And sometimes, as I say with Tottenham, it's just individuals. It's individuals and individual error. And it's one of those things. If he'd have seen that game out, we'd never be talking about Brennan Johnson after the game. If he'd have marked him properly and De Ligt doesn't get a clear header and he nods it wide, we would not now be analysing whether or not Johnson should have been on De Ligt all
Mm.
game. And yet he's done his job all game. And the coaching staff
Mm.
would say, brilliant, that was the way we set it up and that's the way it should
Yeah.
have been. So it's moments. It's about moments. Football is consequences. You've got to do your bit at key moments and we didn't, and we dropped 2 points.
Well, there you go. We did drop 2 points. There were some green shoots in the game. We also didn't go into the international break with a defeat for two in a row now, which is positive. When we come back from the international break, we have a lot of players coming back from injury. That's another thing. The slight asterisk here is, yes, it's PSG and Arsenal away. But I would say we have actually played pretty well against very good opposition away from home under Frank. His system seems to tailor itself well to those games versus other teams. So let's see. I don't think we should just write them off and say, after those 2 games, we can focus again. We've got a great opportunity to slow down Arsenal, who have dropped points to Sunderland again. And we have a great opportunity to, have a good performance again against PSG as we did under Thomas Frank's first game. So I think there's much to kind of take from that and go forward with. And also a thanks to you on the audio listeners, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and whatever other audio platform you use for the star ratings you gave. That's been much noticed, and thank you very much. That really helps us out. And for the 30% still listening, who listen to the end, JJ's Twitter X page, check it out. It's @thefullco. I think it's a bit of a best kept secret I like to keep to myself, JJ, that no one knows it's actually you on there. So it's kind of hidden away, and you're obviously not in the picture, but it's the number 100 in red, and JJ is the name on it. So @thefullco. Yeah, you get some really interesting insights in there. That I think it's more interesting content. I was about to call out someone else's name than you get on some pages with 100,000 followers. So yeah, check it out and up the Spurs.
Come on, Tottenham.